Anzio, The Fight for the Beachhead 1944. This is the game that I want to tell you about today. This is a game that has been published in several forms and versions before. This is the last version that has been redesigned. Now it has better graphics, and I think also there have been some tweaks that have been made to gameplay. But this is the first time that I play the game, so I do not know all the details about previous versions of the game. This is a game that is published by White Dog Games in several forms. You can purchase it as a boxed edition, as a folio in the folio edition, or you can purchase it as a print and play game, which is what I did. I purchased the file, they sent it to me, and I assembled my copy, which is very light, very easy to assemble, not much work there. And I wanted a game that was easy to carry with me and that could be set up easily, quickly, wouldn't take too long to play. Because these days I'm traveling, I am at a conference in Eugene, Oregon, and I wanted a game that I could play on the airplane or during layovers. I had a very long layover in Minneapolis on my way here to Eugene, Oregon. And what I did is I played this game twice. Now I set up the game so I could show it to you. And most likely after I'm done filming this segment, I'm going to play the game again. Now, Anzio, The Fight for the Beachhead. This game, of course, portrays the Battle of Anzio that followed the Allied landings in Italy. Differently from what happened in Normandy in D-Day, the landings were not opposed originally. The problem started when the Germans came to the beaches to push away the Allies. And the game, of course, as you see it here, it's set up portrays precisely that. The Allied player sets up British units, one hex within that hex, and American units within a hex from that hex there. There will be reinforcements coming in later, and after the Allied player has set up his units, the German player adds German units from in hexes on the northern edge that contain roads. Then the game starts. Well, actually, also you have to take into account the fact that there will be reinforcements coming, a particularly large number of German reinforcements in turn 3, whereas Allied reinforcements are coming in much smaller groups. In any case, each turn, first thing, you have a weather check in which you roll a die to determine the weather for the turn. The weather could be clear, can be clear, like in this case already rolled, or you may have rain, or you may have clouds, and of course the weather will influence several factors such as movement, artillery, things like that. Then you have the initiative check, in which you roll to see which player has the initiative. It is a little hard for the Allies to have initiative. It's more likely that the Germans will have initiative more often than not, and this is a way to simulate the indecisive approach that the Allied commander had in this operation. After you have initiative, then if there are reinforcements, that is when they enter the game. Then you have a phase in which, if you're playing solitaire, you resolve the German movement orders. By solitaire, I mean you could play the game like I play it when I play solitaire, which is you play both sides at the best of your possibilities, and the game works perfectly well like that. But I know that some players don't like that, they can't handle the multiple personality thing, and prefer to have an AI, while the game has an AI that controls the German forces in case you want to play the game as a solitaire from the point of view of the Allies only. In any case, if you're playing the game that way, you resolve several aspects of the game in this phase. Then you have the major part of the turn, in which you have movement, first initiative player, then non-initiative player, off-map bombardment, initiative and non-initiative, combat, initiative player, non-initiative player first. Initiative player first, non-initiative player next. Movement, units move up to their movement allowance, which is printed in the bottom right corner of their counters. And movement is modified by terrain. Different types of terrain have different costs. And of course, also the weather may affect that. Also, enemy units have zones of control, and you have to stop when you enter the zone of control of an enemy unit. After movement, you have the off-map bombardment. Each player receives a bombardment attack against the enemy. Each turn, the ally player actually starts receiving 2 attacks per turn, starting from turn 4. Again, that will be influenced by weather. For example, if you do not have clear weather, you can only declare off-map bombardments against targets that are adjacent to your own units, otherwise against enemies that are anywhere on the map. Pretty simple. You roll a die on a table. You may have modifiers, and that simply tells you if the attack was a hit. In that case, the target unit loses a step, or it may be a miss. And artillery superiority starting from turn 4 is really, really important for the ally player. The ally player is going to be outnumbered here. There are some German units that are really scary. The ally player really needs to make the most out of those artillery attacks. After the artillery attacks, you have combat. Again, initiative player declares attacks first, non-initiative player next. And units or stacks of units attack individually. That is a stack against another stack. Other stacks of units that are adjacent to the target of an attack may choose to do nothing, so that they will be used in another attack if they want to attack another enemy, or they can decide not to attack individually and to lend support. Suppose that stack is attacking that stack, and this unit does nothing but supporting that attack. You total the combat factor of all defending units, that is printed in the bottom left corner, and you also total the combat factor of all attacking units. You subtract the combat factor of the defender from that of the attacker, find the differential, and roll a die. Modify the result of a die based on several factors, for example, presence of armored units in the defending X or in the attacking X. Supporting units that are supporting the attack, give a +1. If you are attacking an enemy unit and there are other enemy units adjacent to you that you're not attacking, then that's a penalty for the attacker. Terrain in the defending X is a factor. You take those modifiers into account and you cross-reference the combat differential with the modified die roll, and you find the result, which can be attacker loses a step, retreats, no effect, defender retreats, defender loses a step, things like that. Actually, if you look at the table carefully, you may notice that this combat table is not very deadly. There aren't that many results that will really inflict a step loss on the opponent. I've had games in which very few people died, in which very few step losses were inflicted. What you're trying to do is to push the enemy away, and it's a fight for position, so that makes sense. Also remember, you have the movement phase for both players, then you have the combat phase. That means that the initiative player may move units close to the enemy, but then the non-initiative player gets to move before combat is resolved, so the non-initiative player could move away to avoid combat. However, since this is a battle about defending and gaining position, that is now without an effect. Yes, you can avoid a confrontation, but you are letting the opponent gain ground, which is bad, of course, because that in the long term, even in the medium term, is what gets you to lose the game if you do that too much. But this is pretty much the main idea behind the game. After you have during each turn the initial phases, weather and initiative, then you have movement, off-map bombardment, combat, repeat until one of the players is the winner. And how does that happen, you may ask? That's a very legitimate question. Victory conditions. The Allies win if they occupy the city axis of Cisternia, which is this one, and Campo Leone, which is this one, at the end of turn 12, that is the last turn in the game, or if they eliminate the German side, which I assume means if you eliminate every unit in the German army. Seems tough to me, seems really tough. The German side wins if they capture and hold either Anzio or Nettuno, which is under that stack of units, for a full turn. So that is, if they take control of one of the two axes and if they control that axe for a full turn after they took control of it, then that is an immediate German victory. The game has pluses and minuses, things that I like and things that I don't like too much about the game, but for a game that you can print and play pretty inexpensively, a game that you can build easily, it won't dry up the ink in your printer, it won't take you days to build it, a game that is light to play in terms of complexity and light to carry around, that makes it a good travel game. Well, if you consider all of these things, yes, there are minuses too, but they're not huge ones, because on the other hand, it is a game that, especially if you acquire in the print and pay version, it is not a big investment. It is not a big investment in money. You do not feel like you wasted your money. You don't spend too much. You get a game that you can play for a couple of times. It is not maybe an epic joy to play, but it is entertaining before it gets stale. What does that mean? Well, it means that one of the limitations of the game to me is that it has limited replay value. I played the game 3 times only, and I feel that I'm pretty much okay. I do not know that I will play the game much in the future, most likely not in the near future, maybe in a couple of years or so as an entryway game to show we're gaming to somebody, because the situation is always the same game after game. There's only one scenario. The Germans come from the north, the Allies come from the south. They meet more or less in the middle of the map, where you have good defensive elements, rivers, canal, the Mussolini Canal, forest access, and of course you had the two sides that start pushing against each other. They form lines and they try to punch through the line of the opponent. You manage to push a little bit, but then the opponent, because of that, finds himself able to exploit some terrain elements to achieve defense. The other side then starts pushing back, and now you take advantage of terrain. It is back and forth. Yes, sometimes parts of the line manage to crumble, but it is a slow process. Sometimes you can try to outflank the opponent, but it is not that hard to manage to block that. So the game has not huge replay value, and sometimes it kind of like it boils down to a slow slugging process in which you're just biting pieces of the forces of the opponent. The opponent does the same, but it's slow. Not many casualties happen there. In a way, I would say sometimes there are moments and long parts of the game in which you have the impression that not much happens. You push a little bit, the opponent pushes back. You push a little bit, the opponent pushes back. As a solitaire game, that was okay for me. Also, because of this process, push back, the game tends to me to end in a draw. At least in my 3 games, in my experience, all of the games were a draw. I found it very hard for one of the two sides to reach the objectives of the opponent to win the game. I was okay with that. Again, as a solitaire game in which I played both sides, it just seems to me that if the two sides are pretty much matched in terms of wargaming skill, which I think is what believes when you're playing both sides, then this is a very likely result that will tend to present itself game after game. Maybe things will change in a 2-player game with 2 players or with the AI, but I like to play the game this way. That's how I play it. I'm sharing my experience. So the replay value is not very large. The game sometimes can feel slow, but overall, for what the game is and for what I needed the game to do, the game worked for me. because I wanted a game that could be light to carry around, that wouldn't be too big, that I could set up easily, play once or twice, put back in my bag and move on to the next leg of my trip, or a game that I could play in my hotel room. All these things the game did, the game worked that way. I do not know that I will play it much in the future, as I said earlier, but I didn't spend much buying it, I didn't spend much time or energy building it. Not a great game, not an epic game, but in the print and play version it is a fine travel game. I do not regret building and playing the game. It gave me a quick picture of the battle. It kept me entertained for a couple of hours, so it got the job done. Not a great game, not a bad game, a game with pluses and minuses, somewhere in between great and bad. Not bad is probably the way in which I would describe this game.